Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own.
Not your average nigga, I'm a god out the hood. They can't downplay me, I came up, I'm elevated. I ain't gotta say too much for them to know I'm coming for what's mine. You know they see me in my presence, say they see how I'm coming. Young, but you not just gonna finesse me like you did my peoples. Then back when you said they was emancipated. This ain't that. Your head too big, you feeling yourself. The game wasn't fair, you had the advantage, we wasn't educated. I don't look at you people the same. Nah. Your worst nightmare, my skin tone about them chains. Yeah. Not no circus lion, son, I can't be tamed. You gon' have to kill me, pussy, Toby ain't my name. Y'all still want us think our history started when we were slaves? What? Come on now, talk about them pyramids we made. I was chosen by that man, you know y'all just been running game. The nerve of you acting like...
All right, what's going on, family? It's your brother, King Cam, and welcome back to another episode of Shifting the Culture podcast, where we speak truth to power, elevate the people, and challenge the narrative. And we want to jump right into it. Family. We want to jump right into what we want to discuss tonight, for real, which is really dealing with Jaden Ivey. Nick Cannon. It's a lot of stuff that's been going on, so we just wanted to come and talk about those particular things. I know y'all been seeing Jaden Ivey right now, is currently released from the Chicago Bulls, and there's a lot of mixed emotion around what actually took place with him, right? What actually took place with him. Now, what the report is saying is, 7 hours ago, the NBA player Jaden Ivey goes on social media rant after being waived amid comments criticizing Pride Month. So he goes on live. Y'all probably seen the video on social media. He goes on live. I think he's like riding in the car or something. And he talks about Pride Month. He talks about, NBA, supporting Pride Month. And he pretty much says that, the NBA is supporting unrighteousness. That's what he says verbatim. They're bringing people together for Pride Month, and they're celebrating unrighteousness. That's what he said. And because of that comment, he was waived by the Bulls. And what they said was, is conduct detrimental to the team. So, and I'm going to read from the article right here. It says, NBA player Jaden Ivey went on social media tirade after being waived from the Chicago Bulls on Monday. The Bulls claimed Ivey was waived for conduct detrimental to the team after he made comments critical of Pride Month, citing his Christian faith. Now, we got to ask ourselves. He made some videos after that. He was on a flight. I know he was talking about Steph Curry and all these different things like that, but we just going to deal with the initial video about him criticizing the NBA in their support of Pride Month. And if we being honest, only if we being honest, he didn't say anything that was wrong. He didn't say anything derogatory or anything that was a personal attack to anybody in the LGBTQ community. He mentioned the fact that celebration of Pride Month in and of itself was a celebration of unrighteousness. And if we go by biblical theology, there's a nation of people who were destroyed specifically for the lifestyle of homosexuality. You have other nations who are destroyed, like Egypt and Pharaoh, for the oppression and tyranny and abuse and misuse of the children of Israel. So the argument that people are going to bring up is that, well, homosexuality isn't the only sin. Correct, because God destroyed previous nations for other sins. So I bring up Egypt. I could also bring up ancient Babylon for their mistreatment, abuse, and misuse of the Hebrews. So, yes, God punishes for all sin. So that argument that we bring up about one sin weighing more than the other sin, yeah, that argument has no weight. When we get into the stories in the Quran lists multiple nations that were destroyed purely off of their rejection of the message, their rejection of Allah's messenger whom he sent to save that people. He destroyed that nation. So whether you are an idol worshiper during the time of Abraham, whether you are dealing in homosexuality, whether you are oppressing and misusing and abusing the people, or you simply reject the message of Allah through his anointed servant, God will judge you for all of those things. So that argument is out the door. Now, specifically dealing with what Jaden Ivey said, he didn't say anything that was wrong. And what we have to realize is that some people are not just going to continue to go through the motions just for the bread, because you got people who are saying, that his wife hasn't been talking to him, his family has disowned him, and it's probably around the fact that, of course, he make a lot of money. He make more money than, what the family them probably seen because of his NBA career, and they like, yo, you throwing away the dream. You throwing away, our opportunity for generational wealth, right? That's how they looking at it. At the same time, though, what are you supposed to say to a man who is convicted by the Spirit? What are you supposed to say to a man that's convicted by the Spirit? What's going on, Brother Nathan, man? Brother Nathan, salute to that brother, because he's always chimed in, always participated, always tapped into Shifting the Culture podcast. So salute to you, Brother Nathan, man. So what do you say to a man that's convicted by the Spirit? I need to send this out. Let me see if we live right now. We live on the page. Let's see. Hold on, guys. Okay. Yeah, we are live. All right, cool. So, what do you say to a person who's convicted by the Spirit? You gonna tell him not to be convicted anymore because he got to get a paycheck? Is he not to be convicted or, allow the Spirit to move him because, of some loyalty to a particular job? Because oftentimes, too many of us compromise our principles for some job. I'm going to say that again. Too many times, many of us compromise our principles for a job. We compromise who we are as a person. We compromise our character. We compromise our principles, what we stand for a paycheck, for a check. And I don't know how well that's worked out for us. I don't know how well that's worked for just society in general, because now nobody stands up for anything. Everybody's so weak. Everybody's so scared to be able to stand up for something because they're afraid of the backlash they may receive from, a particular job, a sponsor, some type of funding apparatus. And this is why your politicians are so weak. This is why those who are voted by the people, who are supposed to work on behalf of the people, have no power to do what's best for the people, because the handlers and the ones who give them the money are the ones who are in control. And they are beholden to those who have the money. They are slaves to the ones who have the money. They're slaves. They slaves to those who have the money. We slaves mentally, because we won't get up out our own way. And when we see these people not working on our behalf, we rise up, get those people out of office, get those people out of positions of power, and we bring in new people who have the idea of working on our behalf and what's best for us as a people. Right? So, Jaden Ivey, he did what he thought was best for him. We can't say if it was right or wrong. We don't know his particular situation. We don't know his finances. We don't know what he got set up. All we know is that he did what he thought was best for himself. So we standing with brother Jaden Ivey, and we are praying that he get another opportunity. Maybe he don't want another opportunity in the NBA. Maybe he wants to do something else with his life, and the NBA opportunity was just a stepping stone, was a catapult into something else that he can take that money and invest in. You know, I always encourage our people to do something for yourself, even if you got a job. Keep your job because you got to pay your bills. But set up something on the side that you can have so you're not solely dependent upon that job for your resources and for the things that you need to feed your family. That's it. That's all. So I encourage brother Jaden to definitely start doing something on his own. And if he's looking to get back into the league or whatever, then certainly do that. But don't apologize. He didn't say nothing wrong. So don't go on an apology tour. I know a lot of black men do that when they get in trouble. Publicly, they go on this apology tour and they haven't said anything wrong. Don't go on an apology tour, brother Jaden, because you said nothing wrong. You stood up for your beliefs, and these weak Christians who don't want to stand up for the Jesus they say they believe in, because the Jesus that they say they believe in would be standing with brother Jaden right now. The Jesus that we read about in the scripture, he went into the temple and flipped the tables on them and threw the money changers out. This Jesus that we read about in the scripture, he argued with certain individuals about his position and his perspective on how they were treating the poor. You understand? So I don't know nothing about no weak milquetoast, silent, moving in silent, keeping things to myself type of Jesus. No, Jesus was out among the people. He was doing his work. He was resurrecting the dead. He was performing miracles. He was teaching the disciples. He was going at it with the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And he was talking to the scribes, which is the modern day media. And he was letting them know, this is what we doing. This is the movement, and this is what we standing on. And we're not going to continue to go for the stuff that y'all been allowing to go on for so long. That's the type of Jesus I read about in the Bible. And that type of Jesus would support brother Jaden if you are not feeling like this is a place you need to be, this is a place for righteous conduct. No, you're supposed to stand on that. And you got to step on whatever you got to step on in order to make sure that you staying true to your principles and to your foundation. You know, that's just what it is on that. Yeah, that's what it is on that, man. And then let's get into Nick Cannon. Brother Nick Cannon made some viral statements lately. They got him in the media now. He was on my I forgot what it's called. Cadillac something. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he mentions that he calls the Democrats the party of the KKK. But let's read everything that Nick said so that we don't address this out of context neither. Nick Cannon slammed Democrats as the party of the Ku Klux Klan while heaping praise on President Donald Trump, including for his $5 million gold card, which offers wealthy foreigners a pathway to U.S. residency. The actor and rapper made the remarks during a newly released episode of his web show Big Drive, during which he interviewed Amber Rose, a model and outspoken Trump supporter. Democrats don't care about black people, Rose said, as Cannon cruised around California in a topless Chevrolet K5 Blazer. They don't care about people of color, and the Republicans do, and that's a misconception. I agree with you 100%. Cannon responded. People don't know that Democrats are the party of the KKK. People don't know that Republicans are the party that freed the slaves. Now, this article goes on to say that these statements hold some validity. Formed after the Civil War to terrorize freed black Americans, the KKK received strong backing from Southern Democrats, but it also gained traction within the Republican Party. By the 1920s, membership was roughly evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans, according to the Washington Post. President Abraham Lincoln, who issued the Emancipation Proclamation, was a Republican. Yet today, neither party much resembles its historic roots, due in part to civil rights era political realignments. Now, the beautiful thing about all of these different topics is that they have nuance. They have what is called nuance. And I want to give us the definition of what nuance is so that we can make sure that we track it in this conversation. Now, nuance refers to a subtle or slight difference in meaning, expression, sound, or color. Right? That's what nuance is. Subtle differences. Okay? A subtle distinct or variation. A subtle quality. So when I say these conversations have nuance, they have subtle distinctions and or variations. In this particular case, Nick Cannon is correct about the fact that the Democrats not necessarily would be the party of the KKK, but is correct in that the Democratic Party, specifically members of the South, helped and benefited or supported the KKK heavily in their work in the South, especially when you're talking about during the era of Reconstruction, because that's post-Emancipation Proclamation. You have a lot of freedmen now, and we are doing a lot of different things. You got a lot of us getting into entrepreneurship, a lot of us who are making strides in the South with the land that we are now occupying because the occupied forces of the Confederate Army are now gone. We're making strides. Your Tulsa real estates, your Rosewoods, all of those different things are going on. Tulsa, Oklahoma, all of those things are going on. And then you have KKK that formed Night Riders, things like that were purposely going through and terrorizing black Americans. Okay? This was heavily supported by those who were in the Democratic Party. Another piece of nuance is, yes, President Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. He was the one who signed in the Emancipation Proclamation. But let's be clear, President Abraham Lincoln was not an advocate for freeing slaves. President Lincoln was not an advocate for the black being equal to the white. Actually, President Abraham Lincoln was an advocate for his race remaining dominant or superior over the other race, our race. Let me see if I can pull up that clip. I mean, not clip. It ain't no clip. Abraham ain't going around with no clips. Abraham Lincoln. But he did have this quote, though, about the races. Yes. Let's see. See if I can find this quote. Here we go. He says in one of the 1858 debates, Lincoln stated that I am, as much as any other man, in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. I, as much as any other man, am in favor in having the superior position assigned to the white race. So President Lincoln was not a person who was trying to see black people free. He would much rather have seen the superior position assigned to white people. So let's not lose that understanding, that piece of nuance that's important, even in him signing the Emancipation Proclamation. In him signing the Emancipation Proclamation was for a different reason. There was another intention and a reasoning behind that, and it had nothing to do with him wanting to abolish slavery. Because if he had the opportunity to keep slavery intact the way that it was, and still make the political moves that he was trying to make, he would have. So he was not one, like he said, to favor the position of superiority to be assigned to any other race but the right race. Okay, I'm trying to see. Yeah, they getting into some whole other stuff right here. Okay, but so the nuance. So there's a nuance aspects of this conversation. So we got Lincoln, who signed the Emancipation Proclamation but didn't really want to free the slaves. You have Democrats who supported the KKK. However, you have strong Republican support for the KKK as well. The difference is where you get into the civil rights movement, and parties start to realign themselves and things of that nature. And because President Kennedy was a Democrat. Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General at the time, was a Democrat as well. They supported Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King then began to realign a lot of black people with the Democratic Party because of the love they had for President Kennedy, because of the work that Martin Luther King was doing and the support he was receiving specifically from President Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, and that administration. That's when the realignment of black people into the Democratic Party took place, because early in the 1900s, early in the 20th century, a lot of black people actually were Republicans. That is true. So that's what I said. This conversation is a nuanced conversation. And what happens is when people just read a excerpt, or people just read a headline and says that Nick Cannon says that Democrats are the party of the KKK, understanding this iteration of Democrats and this iteration of Republicans, of course that's going to draw an emotional response. But we can't be emotional in this type of conversation because it requires you to be intellectual and not emotional. So with Nick Cannon saying this, we have to understand that, and what I want to encourage us to make sure that we realize is that none of these political parties have our best interests at heart. None of these political parties have our best interest at heart. And that's best seen in the lack of resources that the black community has received for any one of these political parties. That's best illustrated right there. That's really the best way that that's illustrated. We don't have to talk about personalities. We don't have to talk about presidents. We just talk about resources. We don't even have to talk about policy. Because through the work of Dr. Martin Luther King, we was able, and others, because we can't just leave out like Ralph Abernathy or, other civil rights leaders who assisted in making sure that the civil rights bill was passed. That was important. That was policy that was put in place that would help, to shore up some things, some equal treatment or some just treatment for black people in America. So we can't dismiss that. However, we have to realize that the moment that Martin Luther King was no longer doing the work that he was doing and pushing the line the way that he was doing, and along with the dismantling of other black nationalist groups, militant black nationalist groups through the COINTELPRO program, the minute they was able to get a lot of pieces off the board, they went right back to doing what they were doing pre-Civil Rights Bill. See? Pre-Civil Rights Bill, they went right back to doing it. Compromise of 1877. That was a heavy situation because that really handcuffed black people in America to be set up for those night riders during the Reconstruction period, because it was a compromise of the troops being pulled out of the South that were there to protect black people, specifically from the KKK. See? That's what that was. Uh-oh. I don't know what the heck I did. Disconnect. Hold on. Where'd my camera go? Hold on, y'all. Bro, I don't know what I hit and knocked the camera out. Hold up, y'all. Camera. Oh. All right. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. But anyway, what I was looking for. Okay, 18. Okay, here we go. Since this was brought up, we're gonna go over this, right? Okay, so this is dealing with yes, Rutherford Hayes. Okay, Rutherford Hayes, who was a presidential candidate, I believe. Him and what is this other guy name? No, Tilden. There we go, Tilden. Okay, so you got Hayes and Tilden. Then they go into the whole thing. Okay, so it says the Compromise of 1877 effectively ended the Reconstruction era. Southern Democrats' promises to protect the civil and political rights of black people were not kept, and the end of federal interference in Southern affairs led to widespread disenfranchisement of black voters. From the late 1870s onward, Southern legislatures passed a series of laws requiring the separation of whites from persons of color on public transportation in schools, parks, restaurants, theaters, and other locations, known as the Jim Crow laws, after a popular minstrel act developed in the antebellum years. These segregationist statutes governed life in the South through the middle of the next century, ending only after the hard-won success of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. So Jim Crow came in right on the heels of the Compromise of 1877. Again, this is when the federal troops was pulled out of the South, who were there in the South, that was supposed to protect the free black Americans who were recently emancipated. They were supposed to be protected, and it was Tilden and Rutherford B. Hayes who came to this conclusion, came to this compromise based on the election results of that year, right? So they were trying to manipulate things politically, and black people were caught in the crosshairs. It says that Hayes appointed Tennessee's David Key as Postmaster General, but never followed through on the promised land grant for the Texas and Pacific. Within 2 months, however, Hayes had ordered federal troops from their posts guarding Louisiana and South Carolina state houses, allowing Democrats to seize control in both states. As Florida's Supreme Court had earlier declared a Democratic victory in the 1876 gubernatorial election, Democrats had been restored to power all across the South. So remember, this whole removal of the federal troops, all of this was a political move so that a certain party could regain power in the South. Again, black people was caught in the crosshairs between all of this, and this is why I say that these political parties do not have the best interests at heart. So let's speed this up to 2026. Let's speed this up to 2026. Because when we look at let's just say the last 50 years, again, Martin Luther King and the work of the civil rights movement was important, because in that we was able to get the civil rights bill. Outside of that, though, you have not seen any resources coming to our community via any of these political parties. And it doesn't matter what candidate you have, what administration you look at, whether we look at Nixon, we look at Reagan, we look at Bush, we look at Clinton, we look at Bush, we look at Obama, we look at Biden, we look at Trump. All of these administrations have come and they have gone, in the resources in the black community have seemingly dwindled less and less and less. But every 4 to 8 years, you have black people showing up and showing out at the polls, showing up and showing out in support of political entities who have not given that same energy. You have black people showing up and showing out at the polls, supporting these political entities who have not given that same energy. So when we get uptight with one another, just like they doing with Chile, right? Because they upset with Chile because Chile and her campaign donations, and I believe it was some tweets or some Instagram posts that she had liked, that were in support of President Trump and the administration. They are upset with Chile, talking about canceling TLC show. Now, T-Boz, she in the crossfire because of some campaign donations that Chile made. You see how ridiculous this stuff gets? When we just look at it when we step back and just look at it. We're going to boycott TLC now because of some campaign donations and some political support that Chile had for a particular candidate. And now we are getting on Nick Cannon's bumper for statements that he made. Again, partially true, not completely true, but nuanced enough. And we just have to be emotionless and more logical in our thinking and our understanding of what we got really going on. And then on top of that, really understanding that neither one of these political parties, as I mentioned to you, have our best interests at heart anyway. So instead of us getting upset with one another about the allegiance to these particular political parties, what we should be better doing that would better serve us is us getting together and saying, okay, what can we leverage from either side? If we're going to play the politic game, we should be saying, what can we leverage from either side? We have to be united on the agenda within our community, amongst ourselves. And being united in our agenda amongst ourselves, we can go to either one of these wicked entities and see what it is that they have to offer. And if they have nothing to offer us, then we offer them nothing from us. If they have nothing to offer us, then we don't have nothing to offer them. Meaning they can't buy our vote with chicken wings. They can't buy our vote with T-shirts. They can't buy our vote with media outlets. They can't buy our vote because they want to play in our faces and they want to march out candidates in our face that's going to play to stereotypes that don't even properly portray the majority of black people in America. We're not going to continue to allow them to play in our face like that. And that's where we got to be at in 2026 with this. But we too old to be sitting up here beefing with one another over these different campaign views, these campaign donations, and all of these different type of things. Because here's the deal. Most of us don't even really educate ourselves on these political candidates to the point where, or really get deep in the weeds of these policies to really know what these politicians have up their sleeve anyway. You know how many people was deceived by this current administration? It won't just somebody like Chile. It was so many people that would have been deceived by the things that was said on the campaign trail versus actually what's happening. And that is just the nature of politics. This administration isn't the first to do this. There are things that are always said on the campaign trail that are never fulfilled once the person gets into office. That's why I don't really like politicians and I don't really like politics, because nobody really stands on truth. Nobody is 10 toes down sincere, especially when you get into the higher levels of government. So federal level, it's definitely nobody stepping for truth. Locally, you got more control. Even on the state level, you can go and pull up on some of your state representatives that live in the state. They're easily accessible. But once you get to the federal level, it's like they're not even accessible to the constituents anymore. And they really just be running game. So that, like I said, it's a nuanced conversation with Nick Cannon. Chile, we don't. Number one, I don't support the boycott of any black people. I don't support the boycott of any black people. The only time that we are ostracizing, we should be ostracizing from our community, is when there's an egregious, violation that's taking place. But it has to be egregious, though. It has to be a non-reprehensible type of thing. Now, being a coon can get you excommunicated. Selling out our people can get you excommunicated. Becoming an agent, that can get you, that is non-reprehensible. That type of stuff, is no coming back. No coming back. If you become an agent for the U.S. government against the liberation of our people, then we got a big problem with you. There's no coming back from that. But these little minor things that, Nick saying this about the Democratic Party and Chile and her campaign, that stuff is small. That stuff, we can work through that stuff. But the only way we can work through that stuff is when we see the bigger picture and we understand what really needs to be done and how these conversations need to be had. That's it. That's all. It ain't no need to have your panties in a wad. There's no need to get all upset to get your blood pressure up. There's no need for all of that. There's no need for all of that. Brother Nathan said, created the black codes, the spent-off version of the slave codes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that history is best qualified to reward its research. Meaning that when you go and research history, it's gonna qualify itself when you pull up the results. And the beautiful thing about history is history helps you understand what you're looking at in the present and what could possibly happen in the future. And why things have shaped themselves the way that they shape themselves present day because of what you read in the past, what has taken place in the past. That's why history is important. I love history. And that's a reason for that. All right. So we wanted to make sure that we highlighted those particular points. Really. I'm getting blasted right now on Instagram. Because there was a post that just came out, and it was talking about Brandy releasing some statements about her relationship in the 90s with Wanye from Boyz II Men. She says that she was 16, he was in his early 20s. She mentioned that they both knew that their relationship was inappropriate and that it was wrong and that they did different things to try to hide the relationship from her parents. She had to sneak to go out and see him, and they knew that if the relationship was made public, it would have a lot of backlash, scandal, all this stuff. Brandy admitted to all of this. She admitted that they purposely lied and said they was actually waiting until she was 18 for them to have a, quote unquote romantic relationship. All of this stuff Brandy admits to. So I made a statement and said, listen, what we got to do is we got to be real. We got to have some accountability in the community. We got to have accountability when we're talking about people who are preying on young women. We also have to have accountability for women who are doing things and have a knowledge of doing things and then want to come back and play victim. You can't do that. You can't do that. There's nothing wrong with you reflecting on the mistakes you made in the past and vocalizing how you would have handled it differently. But what we not going to do is make it predatory when it wasn't that without evidence. Now, if there's evidence of predatory behavior, that's a completely different conversation. We have to explore that to the fullest extent And if we find out that there was predatory behavior happening, then we deal with that the way that that's supposed to be dealt with. So I'm not saying that we don't prosecute and move forward on predatory behavior, but this wasn't even a conversation until a couple of days ago. Brandy Ben knew this a long time ago. And if there was predatory things taking place, somebody should have been said something. But let's not come out now and make it like it's predatory for whatever the reason may be. No, let's just make sure that if we want to talk about the past, we can talk about the past, reflect on how things can be better. But let's not make it predatory without no evidence. You see what I'm saying? Because what happens is this sets a bad precedent. Let me explain something. This sets a bad precedent on both sides of the argument. Because men who have relationship with women, and whatever the circumstances may be, this type of precedent now sets the stage for anybody, any woman to go back and say, well, yeah, when we had this relationship 15, 20, 30 years ago, I didn't like it. I was uncomfortable in it, and it was predatory. Wait a minute, man. Like, we all this time in the past, like, what you mean? Like, was there a police report? Was there any attempts to leave? Were you held, against your will? What are we talking about here? This is 25 years ago. And then for victims who are being victimized, they get the short end of the stick because everybody has to go through this whole thorough investigation because everybody's out here looking at an angle. I'm not saying this is what Brandy doing. I'm just saying you got plenty of people that's out here with an angle, and they just say stuff. They're just gonna say stuff. People, they don't have no evidence, and the court of public opinion don't ask for none. They just go with the headline. They just go with the story. So I think right now they cooking me in the comments on Instagram. I got some support in these comments too. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if it's an issue, then it needs to be an issue. It's an issue at the time, and let's address the issue. But let's not come 30 years after the fact and make it predatory, because that's not cool neither. You know what I'm saying? Like all these people, you dealing with people's lives, you dealing with people's careers. Like Wanye don't got a career, he don't got a life, and you just gonna come out and you gonna say these type of things? So, and I'm gonna just read what Brandy said. Brandy opens up about past relationship with Boyz II Men member Wanye Morris. I was a child and he was an adult, and it's time the world understood the difference. This is what she said. The shame ends here. The silence ends here. She adds of coming to terms with the feeling that she was manipulated into and throughout the relationship. I was not a fast girl with a crush. I was not a dramatic teenager who couldn't handle rejection. I was not an unstable, obsessive fan. I was a child, and he was an adult. And it's time the world understood the difference. Now, this is what Brandy said about their entire relationship. The two first connected while working on Brandy's 94 song, Broken Hearted, and says their friendship eventually turned romantic. According to Brandy, the relationship was kept secret because they both knew the public backlash could threaten their careers. I was in over my head, Brandy writes, explaining that she often had to sneak around and lie to her parents about seeing Morris. She says the two agreed to pretend they were waiting until she turned 18 before pursuing anything romantic. But it wasn't just about upsetting or disappointing my parents, she continues. Wanye and I understood with diamond-cut clarity that public knowledge of our relationship would ignite scandal, potentially threaten everything we both worked for. So he and I opted for elaborate fiction. We would pretend patience and claim we were waiting until my 18th birthday before pursuing any romantic connection, she wrote. Brandy also shares that she lost her virginity to Morris during the relationship. Looking back, she says there were several red flags she didn't realize at the time, including him comparing her to other singers like Mariah Carey and being difficult to reach. The singer says the relationship eventually ended after she discovered he had been cheating. For years, she claims Morris downplayed the relationship as a schoolgirl crush, but she strongly disagrees. Brandy says, I believe he took advantage. My comment in response was, we love Brandy. However, in her own admission, she knew that what she was doing. She purposely agreed to the things they agreed to do. She never states that he held her against her will, meaning she could have left at any time. It's fine to look in retrospect at things we did and the mistakes we made, but let's not make it predatory without any evidence of that. That's what I said. And then some people cooking me, some people agreeing me, all this other kind of stuff. So you can't allow people to come and play victim, but they doing stuff sneaking. Because if you sneaking, then you know it's wrong. That's the point. You know in the spirit. You know the self-accusing spirit telling you it's wrong. That's why you snuck. If you honestly thought what you was doing was innocent, then you would have just been wide open with it. And she admits that her and Wanye knew what they was doing was not right. And again, it's not like she said Wanye threatened her. She didn't say that Wanye held her against her will. She didn't say Wanye did anything other than them being in a relationship and they both agreeing. They both having conversations around how they would handle this publicly. They both agreed how she would, meet with him and sneak around her parents and all these different things. There was conversations that they had and agreements that they came up with. It's not like he said, I need you to come see me, and she said no, but he made her come. That's a completely different situation than what she herself described, which was a mutual conversation, mutual agreements on their activity and what they were sneaking around to do. Point blank, period. So you can't get the victim card and you knew what you was doing. That's not what it. Victimhood is for people who have things done to them that they did not want done to them. Period. That's a victim. You don't get to be a victim when you are out here consciously agreeing to do the wrong thing. Purposely working together in a conspiracy with this elaborate fiction that she said. You can't be a victim and do that. Sorry, that's just not how this works. You might not like it, but that's just how it works. So that's where we at with that. But anyways, so yeah, family, I just wanted to come in, tap in with y'all on that. And man, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you think about the comments that Nick Cannon said. What are some of the things you learned in history about the Democratic Party and Republican Party? Also, let me know what's your thoughts on our brother Jaden Ivey, who was recently released by Chicago Bulls. We standing with our good brother and him standing on principles and what he believed in. All right, family, appreciate y'all. Peace.